Hey, we see folks coming in.
Hey,
thanks everyone for taking the time to join us today.
Indeed, these names flooding in.
It's a rainy afternoon.
A rare, extremely wet afternoon in Portugal, in sunny Portugal. So cold.
It feels good. It reminds me of home in the fall.
Yeah,
the smell of rain, and
it's amazing seeing how quickly the fields go green.
Yeah,
after a single shower.
What is it? 2 weeks ago, everything was brown, and now it's just vivid green.
It's gone from gold to green overnight.
Birds are singing.
Yeah,
we're trying out a new background. We've got some. We're sticking with the between two ferns theme.
Yeah. Should we have the questions box open on the screen from the very beginning?
Yeah, we'll pull it up, and we like questions. So throughout this, if something comes to mind, feel free to write it in, and at the end we'll answer other questions.
We're seeing phone numbers from all over the world here. This is so great. Wow, look at this flooding in.
So let's give it a few more minutes just to give everyone a chance to jump in. I'm excited. It's been a while since we've done this.
It has been a while. We did it last in April, I guess.
Yeah,
April or May, sometime in the spring. And the last one before that was November. So we're on a kind of 6-month rhythm. Yeah, this may be the last one for a while, I guess.
We're trying to make a bit more professional setup with the mics and cameras. So let us know if it...
Actually, this is on the wrong setting.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you. All right, let's give it 30 more seconds, and we'll jump into it.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone that was on exactly punctually. We've still got a lot of names flooding in here, so we're just going to give it one more minute, and then we'll launch. Aaron Bills, good to see you. See some names we recognize in the list. Here we go.
All right, let's do
it.
Let's do this. I'm gonna close this so we don't stare at ourselves.
That's a good idea.
We'll watch questions shortly.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Thomas at Nomad Gate. It was a really nice email that
really
he wrote.
Sweet email. Yeah,
it's the great folks to work with.
Yeah.
I think we should probably kick off on the legal statement.
Yep. Take it away.
So officially, our capacity with the fund is we're advisors. The fund is managed by Stag Fund Management, and nothing in this webinar constitutes financial advice. So. What are we going to talk about today? It's an action-packed agenda.
Yeah, so structure, we are going to, of course, address the big question in the title. What is going on with Portugal's Golden Visa? What's the current snapshot right now? Try and provide a bit more intel here, a few hacks and tips and tricks to navigate the labyrinth as always. What's the likely forecast here in the medium term? We're also going to talk a little bit about Pela Terra Farmland, of course. A quick news flash towards the end.
What life is like here in Portugal? It's a common question that we get.
So we're trying to wrap together essentially some information about Pela Terra, some stuff about what's going on with the CEF and the state of the markets, etc. And then just some the answers to questions that we get asked again and again. So hopefully that's helpful for the group.
So we hope you enjoy it. So to start, for those of you who are new to Pela Terra. We think it's important to understand the why. Why do we get up in the morning? Why do we do this?
Where did this project come from?
Exactly. So Alex and I, we both grew up on farms and experienced firsthand what's happening in the agriculture space. Farmers aren't making much money,
right?
While simultaneously their soil is being depleted year after year.
Yeah.
This also ties into the bigger challenge of climate change. So when we first met all those years ago, time's flown.
Yeah.
We bonded. We shared this common problem, this drive to work on something big, and from this developed what we call our mission statement, which is reversing the decline of soil health at scale.
Which kind of came out of, I remember us the first time we spoke and you told me about your family story when we were talking ag, And you were talking about how it had been getting harder and harder on the family farm to make money, and the quality of the soil had been depleting and depleting. Right. And that was how we came up with the mission statement that essentially what we're trying to do here, the big Pela Terra idea, is to reverse the decline of soil health at scale. So at a really significant scale.
And it's the scale part is really challenging.
Yeah, that's what makes it hard.
And so our first step into solving this problem is creating this investable product. How can you generate returns while simultaneously making an impact?
Indeed.
And so Pela Terra actually is the first agriculture-focused Golden Visa fund.
Yeah, indeed. And the first sustainability-focused Golden Visa fund.
So it's pretty cool.
We raised some eyebrows when we launched.
Right.
And now here we are, 100 investors deep.
Yeah.
So it's been a wild ride the last year.
It has. So talk to me about farmland as an asset class. A lot of people aren't familiar with it. What are some things to be thinking about?
Okay, so the reason that when Nathan and I approached this market for the first time, we really came not knowing what golden visas were, not understanding a lot about the other funds in the market. It was kind of an accidental transition for us. The deciding factor in what made us think that this project would be a good fit for golden visa investors is essentially the risk profile of farmland as an asset class.
Right.
We see that the majority of the rest of the market is rested on real estate in one form or another, and most real estate sub-asset classes, if you like, are kind of cyclic. They boom and bust over time. That's not fundamentally a great fit for a fixed term investment, because as an investor, you can't predict or control where you are in that cycle. When that day comes, you want your cash out.
And for a golden visa investor, that period's usually about 7 years.
About 7 years, thereabouts, right? So end of the 7 years, you want your cash out that day. You don't know where you're going to be in the cycle. So there's a big question mark. Is real estate really actually that good of a fit for golden visa? Farmland, because it's correlated much more to the value of what's grown on the land, e.g. demand for food. Right. Demand for food kind of ticks up year on year. So we see this much less volatile, much more linear price progression with farmland, which we had a hypothesis, which has now been somewhat proven, that would be a much more appetizing fit for a fixed term investment and for golden visas.
It's really resonated with a lot of folks.
Yeah,
you use this metaphor often of if you could put your money in a vault. I like this.
So this came out of a conversation I had with when we were interviewing investors back in the day to see if what we were thinking would make sense in their minds. And somebody said, "Look, all I'm looking for is a bank vault. I just want to know that my money's going to be there at the end." And so we started putting this metaphor to other investors. If I could put your money in a vault, no returns, not touch it, nothing sexy, at the end of the 7 years, and your cash would definitely still be there, would you take that deal? And overwhelmingly, people would say, "Yeah, I would take that deal." And so we try to structure something as close to that as we possibly could. Of course, we have to invest the cash. That's a requirement of being a fund. But stashing it in farmland, just buying and holding farmland, such a static asset class,
right?
Felt like something about as close to that bank vault as we could get, kind of metaphorically burying your money in the ground there.
It's an interesting asset, not only from the stability and risk side of things, but there's really two revenue sources: rent and then the asset appreciation.
Indeed, yeah.
So it's pretty.
So that was another good fit for this market, because the asset appreciation is where the really low risk aspect comes from, and then contracted rent every year.
Right.
Very predictable, kind of perfect fit for paying out annual returns, which is what we knew that we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it's as I said, we had a hypothesis this would fit quite well with the market, and 100 investors later, we feel like that's been somewhat proven out. So we're very, very grateful. We know that we have a couple of our existing investors on the call today. So very grateful to you.
Thank you for joining. So how does this work? Someone is curious of how capital is deployed. Can you talk us a little bit about?
So really simply, what the fund does is it buys, leases, and then sells farmland over a timeline that's custom wrapped around the golden visa journey. As it happens, not all of our investors are golden visa investors, but that was the persona, the profile that we were trying most hard to solve the problem for, to offer them something the most convenient. So we buy farmland, we lease it out, and then about 7 years later, 6 or 7 years later, that farmland, a sale is executed. So the big question is, how do we keep this super low risk? And there are two things on that, really. Number one is water.
Yep.
And number two is who are the tenants. So
yep.
we only work with large scale operators who are diversified both in terms of crops and geography. And
the water, that's a fundamental aspect in agriculture in general.
Especially given that for us, climate change is front of mind. We think we talk about climate change, I would say, most days, right? Mm-hmm. Either in terms of carbon sequestration and looking after our soil, or in terms of water supply. Where's it coming from? What's it going to look like next year and the year after that? And the rights that we need to have in place in order to secure this as a super safe asset.
And Portugal is a really interesting place, especially in Europe, in that 9 years ago, Portugal completed this massive public works project of Lake Alqueva, the largest man-made lake in Europe.
Right.
And so this is the water that irrigates all the land that we buy.
Yeah.
And it's very, very front and center.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks for going through that.
Yeah.
So updates on where we are in the fund. As of today, we've raised approximately 26 million.
Mm-hmm. Just over, I think.
It's crazy, this journey.
Yeah.
This is of this raise, approximately 70% has now been invested.
Mm-hmm.
And this is across now over 100 investors.
Yeah, indeed. So this 26, an important thing here is that this 26 million means that we are only 4 million away from our cap, right?
That's interesting.
Until we're completely subscribed. So we importantly have space for a few more investors.
Okay.
But this is a door that will at some stage close. So I guess it.
Yeah, and to just give some perspective, about 250 people are on this webinar. So if at the end of this it's something that's interesting, time is of the essence.
Yeah, time is of the essence. So we love to hear from people. We'll say this again at the end, but we really do love to hear feedback, to receive your questions. We can advise on the whole process. But if it's something that you're seriously interested in looking into Pela Terra Farmland, then don't
send us a note, and we can make sure that the spot's there for you.
Indeed.
Okay, so that's the Pela Terra update.
That's the plug. Finished. Let's add some value.
Let's talk about why a lot of folks came here, and so really one of the first questions. Not only do we hear this on calls, but we see this in a lot of conversations online, and it's around CEF.
Yeah.
So for those on the webinar who don't know what CEF is, maybe could you introduce it?
Yeah. So CEF is the Portuguese Immigration and Border Service. That's what it translates as. So
these are the people that you see when you land
on the border.
Okay.
Exactly right. So you show your passport to someone, that person is from CEF. So they have two primary functions. You can group it together like that. They do the border control, and they do absolutely everything to do with visas. And there are a ton of different types of visas, of which Golden Visa is just one.
Okay. Cool. So how do they play in with the Golden Visa? What's their role with all this?
So I guess it probably is helpful here to stand back and look at the steps that a Golden Visa applicant goes through.
Go through that.
So having made an investment and tick the other various boxes required to submit for a Golden Visa, which your lawyer will talk you through, your step one is to submit what's called a pre-application. This is something that your lawyer does for you. After the pre-application, you would then be invited for a biometrics appointment.
Okay.
Those two things go together to make your application.
Okay.
And so that is then submitted, and a few weeks later you would receive a Golden Visa.
Okay.
And that's sort of done for the initial process. And then every 2 years, that visa needs to be renewed. Again, the lawyer does that for you.
Great. So is a Golden Visa a passport?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
A Golden Visa is a residency permit. So a Golden Visa holder is resident in Portugal, not tax resident, just to be clear. That's a whole separate thing, just resident. So you can live here, work here, come and go as you please. You can transition into the other Schengen zone countries for 90 and every 180 days.
Okay.
And then eventually, once you've held it for 5 years, you are then eligible. There are a couple of other boxes to tick, but that's the big one that makes you eligible for citizenship.
Okay.
And that's when people can think about applying for a passport.
Okay. So that makes sense. And CEF is a key part of these appointments, as I understand.
Right. So CEF, you submit your pre-application to CEF. They take your biometrics. They're the ones that ultimately assess your whole application and award you a residency visa or any other type of visa for that matter. So, and then when you do your renewals, that's with CEF as well.
Cool.
So
what?
So why are we talking about CEF?
What was CEF? Let's say a couple years ago. Give us a status.
So I mean, basically the hot topic here to cut to the chase is that, as I'm sure a lot of folks on watching this will know, things have not been going super smoothly at CEF over the last, let's say, year or so. So to go back in time a bit, before COVID, it used to take approximately 6 to 9 months to get from pre-application all the way to having a golden visa in your hand. So we would hear about some outliers, 4 months, 12 months, but basically 6 to 9 months was sort of the middle of the bell curve. Mm-hmm. Then COVID hit, a lot of staff shortages, as one would expect. That delay time, that processing time started to extend.
Because they were shut down during that time.
No, just because they had staff shortages. It was about safety and they couldn't process things as fast. So fewer people in the offices, et cetera, et cetera. So it just started to elongate, essentially.
Okay.
And then the government implemented something hilariously called the task force. And the task force came in and I understand that backlog began to decrease. Mm-hmm. But then in November 2021, there was an announcement from the Portuguese government that the CEF would be essentially broken up into different pieces and a new agency would be created to manage visas and that other responsibilities would be spread around other police forces, essentially. Long story short, the CEF were not a big fan of this announcement and various strikes ensued. The primary result of that was just longer queues at the airport. We saw pictures in the newspapers of big old queues at the airport.
I remember flying around that time.
Right, yeah, deliberately did it. And then, but there was one strike which went on from about January to approximately May, early this year, which did affect golden visa processing. And at that point, just nothing was going through the machine. So we had new investors coming in and nothing coming out the back end. So that meant that the backlog time was just increasing. And at that point, it got right back up to the worst that it ever was during COVID, which is about 18 months.
Okay.
So until fairly recently, a few months ago, that was pretty much what we were looking at. But then,
tell me that's the worst.
Yeah, that's the worst. That's the worst.
So it sounds like a perfect storm. We have COVID, we have strikes, we have a task force
restructure. Yeah.
Also, Ukraine has happened during this time.
Yeah, that was another thing. So I mean, this was just another unfortunate thing to layer on top. The CEF decided to completely prioritize Ukrainian visas, which I think, of course, most of us would have agreed with. Yeah. Great policy, but it did mean that every other type of visa was bumped down one layer in priority. Okay. So that also exacerbated things.
Tell me some good news. So there's a silver lining.
Yeah. So the good news is that the worst is behind us, essentially. So we're now seeing more and more appointments getting announced. So investors who submitted their pre-applications in August, September last year now have their biometrics appointments booked.
And we're seeing that with Pela Terra.
Yeah, we're seeing our investors go through, which is great. And we have lawyers saying to investors who came in November that they were likely to have their biometrics in February. Mm-hmm. So it's still a big old wait. I mean, that's not 4 months, that's 16 months. Yeah. So nasty stuff for those who came in at exactly that time.
Right.
But what we are now seeing is that biometrics appointments are happening faster than pre-applications are coming in.
How is this happening? Is there something going on that's enabling this?
I think it's just CEF returning back to its normal functioning power. I mean, they're just back up to speed, essentially. And they are, as I say, doing biometrics faster than they're doing pre-applications, which means that the gradient is now negative and the delay is going down and down and down.
But I heard they were simplifying they were automating renewals for certain types of visas.
There's a bunch of new measures that have been coming in over time to essentially take the pressure off CEF, which also allows this easing. Which is visa renewals, not for golden visas, but for different types of visas, have now become automatic.
Yep.
And what that means is that that's just less man hours needed to renew those things, which means more man hours available to process golden visas.
Great.
So that's the positive knock-on effect there. I've also heard that they are currently trying to push through an upgrade essentially to the processes where, so for a start, processes at the desk are much quicker now than they were a few months ago. That saves a bunch of man hours too. And they're looking into taking biometrics information in the investor's home country, which is not only way more convenient for investors and their families, but it also means, again, so much time saved at the CEF offices. That's more time for processing visas. Great. So this is all just affecting the gradient at how quickly the backlog gets back to something we would recognize as normal. We're looking for something less than a year soon, hopefully not too long until we're back to about 6 months.
So there's also talk of the restructuring.
Yeah, the famous restructuring.
And as I understand, this was first scheduled for sometime this summer, and now has been delayed. When this is implemented, well, first, when is this restructuring now supposed to be implemented? And what is the effect of it? Talk to me a little bit.
So as it pertains to this, essentially, currently this program extends until the 31st of December. That's as far out as anyone can see. Okay. And honestly, we can't be sure exactly what's going to happen by the 31st of December. One of two things: either the CEF stays as it is, continues eroding a backlog, and that's kind of fine as long as the backlog is going down. That's fine. Yep. The other option is that they follow through with the restructuring, which is likely to either happen by then or soon after. Okay. And the visa processing gets passed to a purpose-made new government agency. Okay. Which sources in the market are optimistic about, because something that's able to be built from the ground up. Right. In the present day, specifically to address this problem, which has become a real hot topic in Portuguese politics. Right. Can only be a good thing in terms of staffing properly and really making sure they get there.
So to summarize, as I understand, a perfect storm happened, resulting in a year and a half delay for these appointments. Yeah. But a number of things are now happening, which we're already seeing a reduction in this delay. Yeah. And so everyone wants to see the crystal ball. Yeah. Based on these kinds of things, how long do you think it'll take?
I'm no one to say, but let's
guess. You got to guess.
So this is where we are. We're, in terms of delay times, we've been through a kind of an M shape with two peaks: a peak in COVID and another peak because of that terrible strike. And what we do know is that we're going down the gradient again. So we're headed in the right direction. Yeah. Of course, the rate of reduction will depend a bit on when the restructure happens. I think the sooner the better for the restructure. But even before that,
I want some time. Give me a guess on.
Okay. So I think I'm saying we can write this up on the board. And
we should.
I'm saying in a year we'll be back down to 6 months. Okay. In 6 months we'll be under a year.
Okay. Cool. At least. All right. If wrong, we record that. Let's see if this prediction's right. So we need to provide some value for everyone taking the time to listen to this. Yeah. So let's talk about hacks, hints, tips. Okay. What can you do to ensure that you get an appointment quicker? Yeah. Things to think about.
Okay. So the most important thing, and this is obviously more valuable for those that have not yet chosen a law firm, is to choose a really good lawyer. We see this whole range of decision-making, right from people who think they can go it alone, which is really ill-advised, to people who hire cheap lawyers. Not that cheap's always bad, but sometimes it is, all the way up to the big guns. And the processes in Portugal can be convoluted. That's just the nature of things around here. And having someone on the ground that really understands the system, who has the personal mobile phone numbers of all the right people to unlock all the right doors, that is worth its weight in gold. So
I've heard there are some law firms that hire people specifically to call CEF over and over and over again to book a call.
I heard the quote, an army of paralegals the other day. And they're just on the phone, just hammering the phone lines at CEF to try and get through.
So that's probably a good question to ask as you're interviewing different law firms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say when it comes to choosing a law firm, there are people in the market like us and others who are used to working across, we work with 50 law firms. We have a really privileged position in terms of what's working well at which companies. So do reach out and ask us about that. We're very happy to direct. We don't have any affiliations with law firms. So it's
another interesting idea is there are cancellations at last minute. So if you find yourself in Portugal, you could be eligible for one of these cancellations.
Yeah, they pop up at very short notice.
This doesn't work for everyone, but if you have that ability, that could be.
This is specifically for biometrics appointments that we're talking about here.
And the location of the office in which you're applying to.
Yeah,
Lisbon is crazy busy,
always
but
clogged up.
Madeira maybe less so.
Yeah, indeed. So basically, the more rural you go, the more chance you have of getting space at short notice.
So, quick wrap up. CEF is getting better. There's light at the end of this tunnel.
Indeed.
And there's different tricks that you can use to improve this.
Next topic.
Yeah, next topic.
So
this is more another in the news topic that we hear about a lot, and not necessarily related to Golden Visa. And that's real estate.
Yeah. So as it pertains to the title of our webinar of what's going on with Golden Visa in Portugal right now and the outlook for the next year or so, there's two things I would say that we really need to talk about here. Number one is kind of the global outlook for the real estate market at large.
Yep.
And then the other one is the new popular way of getting a Golden Visa, which is €280,000 real estate projects that you can buy into and access a Golden Visa that way. So
let's dive into this. On more the macro side of things, there's a lot going on. We're not economists, so we can't predict exactly how interest rates are.
Even economists can't.
Well, yeah, that's true. We're seeing that as well. But maybe in general, talk about real estate as an asset class and how it might change these kinds of forces.
So I mean, I think this goes back to something I was saying earlier. So the real estate market is inherently cyclic, right? It's always been the case. And right now, we're staring into the face of some chilly oncoming winds in terms of interest rates going up.
Right.
And this is just a kind of as clear an indicator as one ever gets that the markets are about to downturn or have started downturning in some places, I guess. In Portugal, this is particularly worth paying attention to because the Portuguese real estate market has been booming beyond anyone's predictions for about a decade now, and that has been massively influenced by the Golden Visa program.
Right.
There's a kind of social aspect to this as well in terms of unaffordability of housing for the local population, but from an economic perspective, prices that go up that fast, it's kind of due a correction, some people would say, and that layered on top of the global situation it's not. We wanted to bring up two things that were relevant for the future of the Golden Visa program in Portugal. I think real estate has had a great time for the last 10 years, and we have to keep a very close eye on what's going to happen over the next year. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. It's hard to predict, but the key thing is really looking forward to your exit. What will this asset be worth? Not at your time of choosing, but when you're looking to exit this kind of investment. So you said this 280K scheme.
So I'm interested.
Let's talk about
hear your views on this. So we it's kind of the two things that make you think. Like if my mother was entering the market now,
if it's too good to be true.
Yeah. So the one is the interest rates consideration, and the second one is these 280. So we're seeing a significant redirection of money from other types of real estate into this singular program.
Yep.
What do you think the effects of that in the market are?
Well, more and more on calls, I get the question, have you heard about the 280K program? Yeah. So for those who haven't heard about it, just to give it some definition, similar to the real estate space, if you invest 280K into a property in the interior of Portugal, and this includes rehabilitation, you qualify for a Golden Visa.
Yeah, so interior means the non-coastal areas of Portugal, which are much less densely populated.
So a few things to think about is one, the rehab side of things, but more, as they say in real estate, location.
Right.
So in general, I think you and I agree that it's a great program because it brings investment into rural communities.
So that's the logic, just to go through that. So the 280 is actually, it's a reduction on another program, which is the 350 program, which is the rehabilitation program. And the reason for that reduction actually makes perfect sense from a social perspective, which is that they're trying to funnel money into areas of the country which have traditionally been very underinvested.
Right.
Because they're very sparsely populated. So nobody's building houses there. Tourists aren't going there.
Yeah.
It's essentially an area of extremely low demand.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to try and lever some more investment into that area.
So again, that kind of touches on the exit. Think about what the demand will be like when you want to exit this kind of asset. There's we talked to a lot of folks in the industry, and we ask them also, what do you think of this program? And we hear varying responses.
Yeah, most of which we can't quote directly. But we do hear a lot. There's a lot of essentially, I think probably the pertinent way to put it is that because it's the smallest number out of all of the options when people are assessing their options for a golden visa, of course it garners a lot of attention. And what that means is that developers, as you would expect, every developer in the country, it seems, is trying to spin up a program around how to capture some of this manna from heaven. Right. So what that means is that you, of course, in that range, have got some very well thought through prime opportunities. Those are becoming increasingly a kind of a needle in a haystack, because there are programs that we're hearing about now where they're taking money for projects they don't even have planning permission for. Also just things that we hear at lunches with lawyers and things about stuff that makes let's just say it doesn't quite stack up.
The general feedback is to do due diligence on this, and that it's really different than the fund space because it's not regulated.
Yeah, that's the other thing with the whole real estate market is completely unregulated. So there's not really anyone breathing down the neck of these folks.
And a reason why I often hear of investing here also is, but there's a buyback. My capital is safe. So
guaranteed buyback.
And so what are some things to think about when you see buyback guarantee?
So a buyback guarantee is kind of a misnomer, because a guarantee is only a guarantee with a limited company. And just like we saw when a bunch of investors kind of fell for this one before COVID, is that when things go wrong in the markets, any kind of downturn, suddenly the companies that signed these so-called guarantees don't exist anymore. So that's really one to watch out for. I would say it's seen as a way of squaring a circle. A project doesn't quite make sense. So we say, okay, well, people may not believe in the economics of the project, so let's offer a buyback guarantee. And that will hopefully convince people that it's good enough. And then if it works, great, everyone's a winner. If it doesn't work, the guarantees, maybe.
So in summary, I think we're not saying that this is necessarily a bad thing, but to really do your due diligence, ask the hard questions, find lawyers that also ask the right questions for you.
I would say as a final thought on that, there's an interesting analysis that I sometimes hear from investors, which is, if I put my money in a 280 project and it all goes wrong, I've only lost 280. If I put it in a different type of real estate, a 350, there's also a 420, I think it is, or maybe it's a 450, I forget, or a 500, or a 500 in a fund. In all of these bigger numbers, you essentially have more cash on the table, so there's more to lose. And at a superficial level, that makes perfect sense. It's kind of acting like a stop loss at 280, right? The thing to say there is that try and do a bit deeper analysis on what the probability of losing that money is, because of course you don't want to put something in 280 that's more likely to go down than put 500 on something that's likely to do well. So look a bit deeper than just the small numbers.
If the buyback didn't exist,
would you do it without the buyback?
Would you do it?
That's the question.
Yeah.
So as Nathan said, research deeper. Really grill your lawyer about how viable the thing that you're looking at is. Just do research, and that applies to any investment option anyway. Ask
the hard questions.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay. The next topic. This is more of a fun one. We often get asked on calls, what's it like to live in Portugal? Alex, you and I are both not born from here. You can probably tell by our accents. And so it's life is different from where we grew up.
So let me ask you this.
Okay.
Because we have such a high proportion of US investors in our fund.
That's true.
And I suspect that probably the demographic of viewers today is probably quite US skewed. So let me ask you, as a US citizen, what was it like for you moving to Portugal from the US? You came from San Francisco. So I would love to know what were some of the things that you loved straight off the bat, and what were some things that were really kind of weird for you? What were your experiences in the early days?
So this is the first time I ever lived out of the U.S. I've lived in a lot of cities there, but it's the first time living in a space with eyes of a foreigner. I remember in the early weeks and months walking on the narrow sidewalks and cars flying by, trying not to get killed. But one of the things that stands out that is really a pro, but frustrating. It's this constant battle in my head, and that is when I lived in San Francisco, I could get same day Amazon delivery, so I would buy a toothbrush and have it delivered by the end of the day, and I love the convenience, and it was great. Here in Portugal, those kind of services just don't. The
same day delivery.
Well, getting many things delivered can be challenging, as you know. But that's also the reason why I moved here. I wanted to slow life down. I wanted to get off of that treadmill, and in the U.S., at least for me, the draw of commercialism, buying things was really strong, and so I love that aspect about
the slow
Portugal.
pace of life.
It's great, but when I need a tool and it takes forever to get here, it's maddening.
So there's a thing really similar that I thought about a lot in the early days, maybe the first year while I was in the process of adaptation, which is I always had this image in my head of two sides of the same coin. One is where you just want to get something done. Coming from London, coming from San Francisco, you think, this can be quick. And then immediately there's a voice in your head that says, hang on a minute. The fact that everybody's not rushing from pillar to post, desperate to serve everybody's needs is, let's be honest, it does lead to lower customer service than we're used to in the metropolitans that we move from. But it also means that all those people have time to enjoy their lives and to connect with their families and to nourish their friendships.
So the family side's interesting. You go to parks around where you live, and you see the family there interacting. I had a daughter a year ago, and when I go to these parks, old ladies come up to us and they want to touch our daughter, and it's this connection that I didn't feel in other places.
The kind of fabric of society that's hard to find in where we come from.
Right, and it's a smaller country too, so you're not that far away from where your parents live or where you went to school, and so you feel this deep bond among people
within families. So let's wrap this up. But quick, last question on this. What was one thing that you Googled before you moved to Portugal?
The price of beer.
Exposing yourself. One thing I Googled, being from the UK, the one thing I Googled was the number of days of sunshine. Much touted statistic of 300 days. Not today. But the weather's amazing. But that's a cliche point, so we can move past that.
So to summarize with this, Portugal is becoming more popular. A lot of folks I talk to are looking to move here or visit. But we looked up the statistics before this webinar, and we're actually shocked by the number of foreigners now deciding to live in Portugal. 60,000 expats is the number that we saw, and of that, 6,000 are U.S. citizens.
So 6,000. That's hardly anything, huh?
Yeah, and so I was shocked by that, especially with the interest. But it's still very early on and being developed. So it's cool.
Nice.
All right. Let's quickly go through some news things because it's interesting for perspective.
Okay, try and give us how many do we have? 3 or 5 interesting things.
We'll go quick.
Let's go quickly.
The biggest tech conference in the world, Web Summit, is happening November 1st. It draws in quite a few people. It's the basis of the entrepreneurial scene here. We also heard that the long-awaited crypto tax ruling has been made with long-term capital gains tax at 0%.
So a hilarious piece of news recently. Walking along the street and saw you and your baby on the front cover of a magazine. Nathan's 5 Minutes of Fame with some kind of headline like "The Americans are coming" or something. Like that.
Yeah. I took a picture and sent it to my mom. That was great. We have rain.
We have rain after the worst drought in Europe for 500 years. I'm not 100% sure how they're measuring that, but that was the much touted headline.
It's good.
And now we have a lot of rain, and the whole place is green again. It's great.
And the last webinar, we talked about this idea of a green visa. So we're continuing to talk with the government to really differentiate investments that have an impact from other types.
We have a vision, just to put this out, we have a vision of a reform of the Golden Visa program. There's a really interesting thing that happened recently that kind of shone a light on some things, I think. The Greek Prime Minister came out and said that they were doubling the cost of a Greek Golden Visa from $250 up to $500. Theirs is also a real estate focused program.
Okay.
And the Greek Prime Minister, I don't know which party he's from, which side of the political spectrum, but they said it's having a really damaging effect on the locals. Houses are becoming unaffordable. It's exactly what we've seen here in Portugal.
Right.
And in order to try and stem the flow of foreign money just driving up the prices of housing, they've doubled their price. So we would love to see a future with a reformed Golden Visa program, with a much heavier focus on ESG across any spectrum, not just agribusiness, but ESG has a lot of room for investing in different spaces. So that's kind of our vision. We'll see how close we can get working with the government here to implement that.
So we have one last quick section, but while we talk through it, write some questions because that's going to be the follow-up.
At the end,
So you're someone on this webinar. You've listened to everything that's said, and you want to get started through the Golden Visa process. What are some next steps? Important things to think about.
So next steps, the big ones are absolutely hire a lawyer, hire a good quality lawyer. I said it before, I'll say it again. We are available to help with redirecting, or if you think, my friend used this law firm, what's your opinion? We're happy to offer impartial opinions about that. So hire a lawyer. They will then help you achieve your NIF, which is your Portuguese tax number. That is a prerequisite for opening a Portuguese bank account, which is a prerequisite for making an investment in Portugal. So those are the key steps.
And you can start all that before even figuring out where to invest, right?
Absolutely. And you should do as well, because sometimes you can get held up in the compliance stage of the bank. Sometimes the tax office takes a few weeks to issue a tax number. So if you're wanting to do this whole process within a kind of 3-month window, let's say, don't wait and then start something, because you'll kind of always be surprised at how long something takes to complete around here.
So also once you decide on an investment, ask good questions. Really dig into how it works, the mechanics. Use your lawyer to do due diligence. That's a really important part of this process. And then for us, if you're interested in what you hear, call us. We love talking about this.
People,
and it's nice to see face to face, and you can get in touch with us in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, we're going to send out an email after this with you can actually click a meeting straight through to our calendar to speak to one of us. You can also ask for a callback. We're for those who like to communicate in this way, we have a WhatsApp channel that's open all the time. So any of those ways are good. And to reiterate what we said at the beginning, there are a limited number of subscription spaces available in Pela Terra Farmland. So if that's something that feels like it's of interest, do reach out, and we'll send you some information so you can do more analysis on us.
Okay. Let's answer some questions.
Okay, so there are great news, but there are a ton of people on this webinar. So realistically, we're not going to get to all of these, but we'll try and do our best. Pizza. So it's like AcreTrader. It's not a million miles away from AcreTrader, right? We don't function in the exact same way. For those who don't know, AcreTrader is an agriculture investment platform in the US.
Yeah.
We love what they do. It's a really cool company. So we're fans of them. But our thing works slightly differently. But obviously the risk profile is relatively similar. The returns are relatively similar.
Peter also asked about what's the criteria when we look for land. Water.
Yeah.
Lots of water.
Yeah.
as key. We also look for land in a specific region for climate reasons to allow higher value commodities to be grown. And really, we don't buy land less than 100 hectares because that's generally the size you need to get the right.
But those are kind of our starting factors. And yes, love your reference to the generous approach, Peter, is a thing that we think about a lot. So book a call and we can go deeper on that. Let's see, how quickly is the pre-application after the submission of the application? Okay, so actually, Wendy, those are the other way around. So at first you submit your pre-application. You submitted in May 2022 and you haven't been pre-approved. Okay, so I mean, honestly, that's a question for your lawyer. Wendy, if you want to email us and chat about
we can follow up with the details.
We can help chase up, but they're the ones that will be able to give you a proper prediction on that.
Brent asked, is there a list of recommended lawyers? Brent, send us an email and we're happy to introduce you.
Yeah, there's not an official list of recommended lawyers. So let us know what it is that you're looking at and what it is that you're trying to achieve with that. And we're more than happy to chat to you about that.
And then Brent also asked, any anticipated changes to investment levels at the end of the year?
So no, there aren't. But I have a cool stat that I read the other day. So at the end of last year, most of you will already know, the price of an investment into a fund went from 350 to 500,000 euros. At the time, that represented, in absolute terms, that represents a 43% increase in price. Pretty significant bump. However, because of the developments in the foreign exchange market since then,
we forgot to talk about
this. The US dollar
this.
got so much stronger against the euro that actually it's now only 19% more expensive than it would have been. So sure, it's still more expensive. That's not ideal. But that what seems like a huge bump has been more than half of that price increase has been eroded just by the luck of Forex. So as we know, those charts go up and down. There is, of course, a logic for seizing the moment if you're a dollars holder right now.
Yes, we'll be providing the recording to this talk after, Richard. And
yes, recording. Lots of people asking about recordings. Okay, so let's go through some of the terms of Pela Terra. There's some good questions here. So we'll keep this super quick. But essentially, the target returns from Pela Terra Farmland Fund are an annual payout of 5%, and then an exit payout additional of 14%. So what that means is if someone were in for 7 years to the day, it would be 5 times 7 plus 14, so which would make a 49% return in total. Mm-hmm. So you could call that a 7% IRR averaged over
like a blended. Okay.
Yeah. So annual payouts is the short answer to that one. There are not GV renewals having expired. There are some folks who have been late to attempt to renew their GVs, and that's another data point for having a really hot legal team on it. Someone who's going to carry you all the way through the process, not just get you set up and then leave you.
Another question is, given the extended processing time for golden visas, is there enough time remaining in the fund to fill this requirement? For us, yes. So the length of our fund is 9 years with the option to get out at year 7.
Yeah, year 7 or year 8 or year 9.
So as an individual investor, you can say, I need more time, I want to stay in, or I'm ready to get out.
Exactly. And so when we were referencing something we said right at the beginning, when we were setting the terms when we were working with a team to set the terms of the fund, we foresaw that some investors would be a long way ahead of others, and we built in this flexibility at the back end. So yes, that's all taken care of. Happy to go deeper on that on a call, no problem.
Eric asked about 8 months since Seth biometric appointment and no residency card issued. What are the next steps? Eric, reach out to us. This is probably a lawyer-specific question.
Yeah, it would be good to know, Eric, who your legal team are. Let's chat as a group that we can try and push that forward.
Jennifer asked a great question.
Really good question. Should have said this actually.
When does the 5-year clock start? Does it start from the pre-application?
Okay, so the 5-year clock starts from when the golden visa lands in your hand, or when they mail it to you, I guess.
Okay.
So you've got your pre-application. Let's call it round numbers about
more specifically, you make an investment into a qualifying investment.
Yeah, and then a couple of weeks later, a week later, depending how organized your lawyer is, you can submit your pre-application. In theory, you can do it the next day.
Yep.
But realistically, a week or two later.
Okay.
That starts the initial CEF process of varying length, but round numbers, let's call it about a year. And then you receive your golden visa, and that's when the 5-year clock starts. So this is why earlier on in the talk we referenced a 7-year timeline, and you'll all know that on paper it's a 5-year timeline. We add on a year of bureaucratic delay at the beginning and a year of bureaucratic delay at the end, and that makes about 7 years.
Michael asks, I've heard the CEF decided to change the biometric appointment process to take investors in the order they invested, rather than based on how quickly your attorney grabbed an appointment.
So both of those things are true, Michael. So what that means is when the CEF opens up new appointments and then your lawyer has to grab it, they open up those appointments only for investors who invested between date X and date Y, and those chunks are moving in chronological order. So it's not one by one, investor by investor. It's you're grouped together in groups of a month or two, and those are processed in chronological order. I hope that makes sense, Michael. I'll ask a clarifying question if that wasn't clear.
So for the sake of everyone's time, let's wrap this up.
Okay.
It's been really enjoyable.
Yeah.
Always enjoyed chatting with you. Thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to us.
Yeah.
And we're very easy to get a hold of. What's if they haven't received an email, what's the best way?
So the best one is info@pelaterra.com. I was just saying it was behind me, but it's not. info@pelaterra.com. We will follow up with emails. So hopefully it'll be very low friction for all of you to reach out and connect with us.
It's certainly been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.